Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second in a series of Zooming Across South Texas with commercial real estate. This series is sponsored by South Texas Commercial Association of Realtors, or STCAR. We're a primary real estate board overlaying 44 counties in South Texas and working with 22 real estate boards. We invite you to check out stcar.org for more information, and we invite you to become a member if you're able to do so as a primary member or secondary member. Today, we have a little bit of change in plans. One of our speakers is taken ill, and so our other speaker, Mr. Carlo Milano, has graciously agreed to lengthen his presentation. And in talking about Laredo, we also want to put down on your calendar for Tuesday, October the 17th, which will be our third series, and it'll be covering the Rio Grande Valley. So be looking for information to hit your mailbox regarding that. But this morning, it's a great pleasure to welcome Carlo Milano, who serves as the president and CEO of Forum Commercial Real Estate. He's been in that position for more than 9 years. He's a real estate broker in South Texas and Northeast Mexico. He's experienced in brokering as a tenant and landlord representative for both USA and Mexican companies with industrial and office space along both sides of the US and Mexico border. Carlo was graciously spoke at our economic summit when we held that this past year, and his presentation at that summit was well received and full of just a lot of information regarding everything that's going on in Laredo. So Carlo, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do your presentation, and then we will have some questions and discussions following your presentation. Carlo?
Randy, thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for joining and for the interest in these presentations and our great market down south in Laredo, Texas. It's really an incredible market. And Randy, what I'm going to do is basically a continuation or an update rather of the presentation that we had last year. And the reason for that is I think pretty obvious. The statistics and the demand for industrial space, more than just generally, commercial space in Laredo is very telling of the story of what's happening in South Texas and along the I-35 corridor. I am going to share a little bit of an update on retail and office before I dive into the industrial section. And it is, it's interesting that you see these stats in a market like Laredo, although, better than the national average, they're still not great statistics. How can I share? Here it is, share screen. When you can see it, Randy?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, let me hit the presentation button. Is it in presentation mode or?
Yes.
Okay, great. Put this over here. All right, so these statistics are interesting, right? You look at our total retail, 20 million feet, and a vacancy of just under 2 million feet, just shy of 10 million, just shy of 10%, I'm sorry, in the vacancy. The national average, retail has gotten a little bit stronger, and you've got a vacancy of 4.2%. So we're not performing very well on the retail side. And I think a lot of retailers just struggle when they hit these South Texas markets, particularly the border, when you look at your statistics and try to make up for the Mexican side of the border, which really is hard to come up with when we use data that comes out of the software we all subscribe to as brokers and realtors. So you come to the border and you try to come up with these site to do business and other tools that the retail sector uses, and it's very difficult. It's very challenging to say, well, how do you come up with the stats of sales from the Mexican shopper, right? How do you make up for that population that your sales tell you one story, but the statistics that you're getting from a census tell you a different story. So I think that's why up and down the border you're seeing these vacancy rates. It's harder for retailers to make these decisions along the border. Here's a statistic on office. Now, office, it's along the border, particularly in Laredo, most of our office is inside warehouse space. The office that is not inside warehouse spaces, are banks. And, we've got, we had this Regis office, which is actually now closed. This building in particular that you see on this picture is a 40,000 square foot office building that only has 10,000 square feet occupied. And we see that throughout, downtown. There's a lot of office, a lot of retail that's vacant, and I think that is telling of where the office and the retail sector are. But you look at where Class A office space is in a market like Laredo, and that office is inside warehouse space. So I think we're going to see a shift in these markets as real estate in general becomes very expensive. Those that are starting to absorb way more office space inside their warehouse, they're likely going to turn around and say, hey, we can take this office out of the warehouse space and perhaps locate ourselves in these vacant buildings that are way more affordable than if we keep adding on to this warehouse space that we need for product and the bread and butter of their business. So I just wanted to share a little bit of this before we dive into the happy sector, the industrial sector, right? It's not all peachy when it comes to these markets. There's certain subsectors that are not performing as strong. Obviously, they're much smaller. You look at the retail total is 20 million and our office is 6.9 million, versus our industrial sector is just reached over 44 million square feet. So it's a quickly changing market. This is what I titled the presentation that I gave to you. Maybe some of you folks were present then, and some of you are new. Laredo, the new inland empire. Why we call it this, at our office is, I think it's following the story of the Inland Empire in California and how that became what it is because of trade and manufacturing moving to China. And now we're seeing that shift of products moving their manufacturing to Mexico. And so this border community is quickly becoming the new inland empire as Mexico in a way becomes the new China. So this is a title from an article in the New York Times, how a Texas border city is shaping the future of global trade. And that's labeling specifically Laredo and in relation to manufacturing relocating from Asia to Mexico. This is another article that we saw recently, right? So more warehouses, more demand is being seen. By the way, this article, it's interesting that Morgan Stanley is quoted here We actually handled the project, the Morgan Stanley funded in Laredo, and I can say now that the 3 buildings that they were involved in are now 100% leased, and I will actually have a picture of them. They're all under construction, all pre-leased, 950,000 square feet of buildings. So this was an article back in February of this year, and in 6 months, the market has changed drastically. Very, very positive changes. I mean, one more article. So we see in a lot of markets, even just in San Antonio, you saw a lot of developers cancel their agreements on land, as they thought, well, maybe we're overpaying, we're overbuilding, this can't be right, we must be getting something wrong. And then interest rates kept doing this, kept going up and made it, still challenging. The construction price is still going up. But, as developers pulled out and absorption continued to go forward, the small guys kept getting squeezed out of warehouses. And, this particular article is addressing the Inland Empire, but it's happening in Texas, right? A lot of the REITs and growth of industrial development went to the north of the state, and in the south of the state, the effect that you saw in Dallas with over 90 million square feet getting built of warehouse space didn't necessarily happen that way in South Texas. So now we're playing catch up. Right now we're needing to build more with challenging conditions on the capital markets and economic side. So the small guys are getting squeezed out, and it's really hard for them to lease space when you've got larger groups just agreeing to really high rental rates and just very, very expensive terms for the smaller companies. There's one more article, and I highly encourage you folks to look up Peter Goodman. He's got a podcast, and he talks about what's happening in Mexico. It's interesting. This is back from February, so the statistics for just for Monterrey, which is 2 hours south of Laredo, you had over 15 million square feet of industrial space get absorbed last year in Monterrey. And the interesting thing is we're thinking we're bringing this nearshoring is bringing the companies back from Asia. Well, the Asian companies are also coming with that, right? So 5 million square feet out of the 15 million square feet that were absorbed in Monterrey, Mexico, were all Chinese companies. So it's a really interesting shift, right? The very own Chinese manufacturers saying, well, if all this is moving, we're moving with it, right? And to that point, they're building industrial parks. There's an industrial park in Monterrey called Hofusan, and that's all Chinese companies there. They're having their challenges and struggles, particularly I would say on the cultural side. How one culture works versus the one they're used to. But regardless, their absorption of space and relocation to North America is happening. And as manufacturing is, we're going from a globalized economy, globalized industrial manufacturing and supply chain to a more regional. So it's becoming a regionalization. So it's almost like we're taking a step backwards, but it's getting accelerated really fast. And I shared this graph back in February, and this is for last year where Laredo finished, right? Just 43 million feet. Now we've surpassed that. The new total market for Laredo is 44,783,000 square feet. So just in 6 months, we've grown almost 2 million square feet. It's and we see it. I mean, it continues to accelerate the growth. We really don't see this market slowing down. You know, these pictures I showed before, just so you could see what, you know, the old bodegas, the old warehouses look like, right? Prior to NAFTA, you know, these were, you know, built in the 80s. And then this is what you're seeing now, right? These are all Class A, you know, ESFR buildings, just, you know, state of the art. This is, by the way, the largest privately held developer in the nation, Majestic Realty, from the Inland Empire. They bought 2,000 acres in Laredo and are developing product. This picture is already outdated. Just beyond Source Logistics and Avanza, they've cleared out an additional, you know, 150 acres and are planning another 2 million square foot expansion. So, you know, the what these buildings look like prior to, you know, the mid 1990s to today is very different. The sizes as well. The previous picture I showed you, that was no more than 40,000 square feet. These buildings, the smallest building is 75,000 square feet. The two large buildings are 366,000 square feet and 423,000 square feet. These are very large buildings, folks, for these border markets. This is another building. If you're eating avocados, by the way, there's a really good chance it's coming out of this building. This is the largest avocado distribution facility in all of North America. 263,000 square feet of refrigerated space, all dedicated to avocados. And this is all product coming from Mexico. So it's not just a manufacturing, it is also produce and other, you know, sectors that are also choosing the same route to come through the, you know, what was previously called NAFTA highway, and you know, through Laredo into, you know, into the United States. This is another picture of Pinnacle Industry Center. This park, this picture doesn't capture the entire park. This park started. Oh, somebody may want to mute themselves. Here we go. This park started just 5 years ago. We've got, you know, way over 2 million square feet already built and over 2 million square feet being built currently right now. So in this picture, you know, this building is 80,000 square feet, new building. This building in the back, that company just moved in another 100,000 square feet. This, you know, do you see my cursor, by the way, Randy? You do. This structure here is a 400,000 square foot building under construction, but this actually already has walls tilted. So this was, you know, about a month old picture, but, and then next to it is 340,000 square feet. That's already leased. This is trading proposals. And then right on this corner, there's another 400,000 square feet that just broke ground. And across the street from them, there's 4 lots, or all between 20 to 25 acres each. And then each of those within the next 6 months will see a building between 300,000 and 450,000 square feet. So this park, again, right now has over 2 million square feet under construction, and we're expecting another 2 million to break ground within the next 6 months. It's an inordinate amount of space. And by the way, you know, we talked about retail, we talked about office, and those percentages were, you know, just over 9% of vacancy. Our vacancy in industrial, even with all this growth, remains at 0%. So I showed that because it's a contrast between the retail. You can't explain it. How is there, you know, where are all these workers coming from and where are they shopping, right? I think there's going to be a big adjustment on the retail. We're seeing a lot of new permits, new restaurants coming in, but the existing space, there's a lot of vacancy. We're still seeing theaters, movie theaters that became vacant and are being sold. But it's good to understand the entire ecosystem of the commercial real estate in one city to try to understand what's happening in the future. Here's another picture, and you're going to say, well, I'm just looking at one building and a bunch of dirt. Well, it's important to look at this because this park, this building was built on the second expansion of the park. The 4 buildings that I told you were going to break ground are all back here in these lots. This is another 400,000 square footer that actually now has concrete being poured. And back here where you see all the machinery working, they're clearing an additional 1,000 acres for an expansion of this industrial park. So you're seeing these industrial parks not grow by 50 acres or 100 acres or 200 acres. You're seeing them expand by 1,000 acres. And you would say, well, who's going to take that 1,000 acres? I can speak on this one because our company handles the sales on this park and the consulting on the development. And we've got over 200 acres already pre-sold, and there's not a plat recorded on it. This is a different industrial park. This is the buildings that I mentioned. You've got Wall Street money on these, and they're all pre-leased. So this building on the frontage of I-35 is 450,000 square feet. This building here is 300,000 square feet. This other building is 200,000 square feet, 100% pre-leased, and no certificate of occupancy yet on any of them. And just behind them, we just broke ground on this another project. This is 2 buildings, 850,000 square feet and 550,000 square feet. We are already trading proposals on those 2 buildings. And as you can see, not one stone has been lifted there yet. So again, the speed and the demand for industrial space in this market is incredible. Truly incredible. Then you're seeing, I'm just showing some hybrid buildings. But the important thing here is that you see around it, there's more land around it. Well, look at the horizon. 1 building, 2 buildings, 3 buildings. Those 3 buildings are nearly 600,000 square feet. Plus this one, that's another 700,000 square feet if you count all 4 buildings. This is a different industrial park on I-35. And I see some hands racing up here, but anyways, I'm going to stop sharing here. This is the end of my slides. I just wanted to share these stats and give you a quick update of what we're seeing happen in Laredo. Again, I truly believe the retail market is going to adjust. You can't have this exponential growth and industrial and not have a growth in the population and a need for more retail and entertainment for all these people. And the office sector too, although now that's changed between, hybrid office and, fewer days in the office. I'm a true believer that it's harder to perform from your house with distractions than a physical space, but perhaps some of you folks will disagree, but I do think the office is coming back. Yes, there's going to be changes, but you can't keep, particularly in a market like Laredo, you cannot keep taking away from the industrial space. It's so precious right now with office space that perhaps will not be needed, when their lease term expires and they need to relocate to a larger building. So it's a difficult investment for both developer and user to do. And it's also difficult for the tenant, right? The space user to have to relocate and keep building these offices every time they relocate and expand or contract. But for now, we're seeing mostly expansions in most companies. So I do believe that the demand for office space from a lot of these industrial users is going to happen, and it's going to be a rapid change in the market and a rapid change in perhaps other markets up and down the U.S. Mexico border.
Carlo, that's it's just amazing everything's going on out in Laredo. And you know, when we're talking about nearshoring, and you know, for those that are on the webinar, nearshoring is a definition of where a business moves its operations to a nearby country from one of a greater distance. And just like we used to have offshoring, where everything moved to China or to Taiwan or something, it's all coming back. And so the product being manufactured is being moved back. And you know, in this time of world trade, politically charged environment, where other countries are increasing tariffs on product, then it's encouraging those companies to come back and to do nearshoring. Now, in the Laredo market, and it's pretty obvious after your presentation that it is really impacting Laredo. And do you see that it is the rest of Webb County benefiting from that, or is it strictly just Laredo? How do you see that?
That's a great question. So, you know, maybe some of you folks are familiar with MUDs, municipal utility districts, but if you're not, I guess the best way to explain it would be it's, you know, a municipality without the bureaucrats. So Laredo is seeing the first, or Webb County, I should say, is seeing the first MUD, or municipal utility district, being built. And it's a 3,000 acre development called Gateway, which, you know, our firm is blessed to be tasked with handling the sales of this project. So you can find it on our website, forumcre.com. And so that is the first municipal utility district that will allow users of land. The first section of that development being built is industrially focused. It's 300 acres out of the 3,300 acres. And you do not need to go through, you know, city permitting or because you're not getting city utilities. So basically what it is, it's a you know, a small city, if you will, just for utilities. So, you know, you build, you know, your own water wells or water supply to have the users consume from your you know, development. And the same goes for sewer. You build a sewer treatment plant, and the same you know, for power, fiber, internet and all that. You get other service providers obviously to come in and bring to the development. So anyways, that development, Randy, is outside of city limits and it's taking place now. There's a second development that the Brittingham family is going to be developing soon, another 700 acres, and they actually are in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Laredo, but they are still outside of city limits. The city is not going to be annexing them, but or at least that's the last news on it. But you know, so they're looking to build a second MUD. So from having no MUDs in Webb County, now you have one, and you have a second in the works. So if you add those two together, that's 4,000 acres of additional development in the periphery of the city. So it's I truly believe that an MSA is in the works, and you're getting a metropolitan area being developed as we speak. Interesting.
And where do you, well, before I ask this question, one of the common things that we've always heard about Laredo, of course, is that it's controlled by four families. Developing was difficult. It wasn't very business friendly. And but it seems like that's changed a lot in or is it still the same in that
You do have those historical families that have incredible land holdings, but there is significant growth. These two new developments that I mentioned are um, outside of those, families' land holdings. And I think they're coming along and understanding that growth is going to happen beyond their land. And but I give them also credit that because of that constraint, the values have maintained, and I think that's helped the city tremendously as well from both just user standpoint and from a taxation standpoint as well for the municipality.
And is there any concern as far as the infrastructure capacity, or is that being built along with as the development happens? Is the infrastructure capacity being enhanced as it goes?
Yeah, the answer is yes, but it is an absolute concern, and we're seeing it. And one point that I didn't mention is we've gone from seeing less than 1 million square feet into just 2018 of new industrial space to over
44.
5 million square feet, and we're seeing over. So when I originally gave you this presentation 6 months ago, we were tracking 4 million square feet of new industrial space. We're now tracking nearly 6 million square feet of new industrial space getting built, and an additional 2 million proposed, right? Now you're not going to see it all get delivered in 2023. A lot of it will be, pushed to 2024, and maybe some of that into early 2025, just because of the size of these buildings and permitting, et cetera. But it's all on the pipeline, right? So that's moving forward, and it's happening. Some of these developers are having a hard time with the economics of things, right? Their equity and their debt is not flowing as it used to, right? And it's really hard to underwrite these big buildings with higher interest rates and maybe stricter terms from their equity partners, right? That are putting money in because they've seen the risk that you could have. But on the absorption side of things, it's all positive. So it's really hard to digest a market that is so dynamic when you have the negative side on the capital markets. But the utilities are getting developed. The infrastructure is getting developed. Yes, we're struggling because it's an exponential growth, Randy, and but we're seeing funds and incredible support from the state government and the federal government. Laredo's received $1.6 billion in federal funds, and so you visit here, you will see a lot of road infrastructure growth, and a lot of that money is going to go into doubling the capacity of the World Trade Bridge as well. This bridge was built to handle 10,000 crossings a day, and we're seeing over 17,000 crossings a day. So with this fund, they're going to double the capacity of the bridge. So obviously, if you can picture 30,000 plus tractor trailers funneled through one bridge, you need to beef up the road infrastructure and all the arteries to and from it. So yes, that is happening, but we are a little behind.
Is in talking about the roads, is there talk about expanding the I-35 out past the checkpoint as well as what's called the marker 12 congestion?
So yes, you're seeing again all roads getting expanded. Apologize, my cell phone is ringing. All roads getting expanded, and even, you know, the I-69 corridor coming in from the valley, you know, hitting Laredo. So there's incredible data from the county, the Regional Mobility Authority. Apologize, I couldn't think of the name. Regional Mobility Authority posts some really good updates on road and infrastructure. So if anybody's curious about, you know, how these plans are getting built and which road is getting built first, you can kind of see all the arteries and, you know, how they're prioritizing it between the, you know, government and at a state level and federal level.
So of the new development, are you, what would you say, like people like Majestic and those developers, are they, is each one of their buildings like a standard 100,000 square foot building, so many feet in clear height? And
so again, the new buildings are much larger. So the specs on all the new buildings we're seeing from these folks are larger than 200,000 square feet. So you're likely going to see, you know, several 500 to 800,000 square foot buildings in this next round. We're seeing 3 buildings in the 600 to 850,000 square foot size, and at least a handful of buildings in the 300 to 450,000 square foot size, and several others smaller than that. So the 100,000 square foot building, Randy, is now considered a small building for this market.
and what's the standard clear height of those buildings?
That's a great question. So that continues to get pushed, you know, north of 32 feet. The average now is 32 to 36 foot clear height on these larger new buildings.
Wow.
Even though the market doesn't really demand it, you're seeing most of this market, you know, if they rack product in a building, it's 24 to 28 feet clear height. Few rack at 32 foot clear height. But most of the market is just floor stacked, not really racked high. And but, you know, again, when they're, you know, these developers are building these buildings and their equity partners say, hey, well, we may consider selling these buildings in the near future. You know, Wall Street dictates certain things, and, you know, we may be, you know, perceived as having buildings that are, you know, not up to today's standards. So let's build them taller, even though you're not going to use probably 10 feet out of the height. You know, they're still building them, you know, taller and taller every day just to meet the overall average criteria that you're seeing across the nation.
And oh, and I forgot to mention this. If anybody that's out there has any questions, if you put it in the Q&A section for Carlo, then we can answer those as we go along. But in the beginning, you talked about how a lot of the office space was in the industrial buildings. And so on average, what's the square footage of office space that's in an industrial, say, you know, 100,000 square foot building? What's your average office space going to be, the ratio going to be?
Yeah, so typically you see about 5% in the buildings, but a lot of custom brokerage work demands more office space because you've got a lot of, you know, folks still capturing data entry between, you know, documents for bills of lading right from Mexico and the US that are basically registering what products are inside the trailers that are crossing the border. So you need a lot of physical, you know, presence from folks that are, you know, translating the document from paper to computer, and from a US system to a Mexican system and vice versa. So those folks typically demand more than that 5%. And I truly believe that we're going to see a shift there and them considering office space, true office space outside of industrial buildings.
And do you see the development of refrigerated space increasing in that market there?
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely it's increasing. It's very different than the Valley. So in the Rio Grande Valley, you see more of the wholesale, type of user. So, and I may be getting a little technical for folks, but you got two types of industrial ways of moving product: LTL and full trailer load or full container load. So the LTL is less than a truckload, and the other one is a full container, so or a full trailer. And those folks that do smaller batch means you got to stop somewhere along the border and say, okay, these 3 pallets of produce are going to, they're going to stop maybe in McAllen, and they're going to send 5 of the pallets to Houston, 3 to Laredo, and 5 to Dallas. Maybe another 3 to San Antonio, just for sake of explaining it. And then the full truckload is going to say, well, why are we going east? We're going to have to come back west to I-35 to hit the major markets. So those full truckloads are going to choose the fastest route. And if they are doing that, they're going to stay, on I-35. So I think the, scientific approach to this is saying that the, LTL produce folks are going to prefer to be in that LTL produce environment that's already built in the Rio Grande Valley, where you have a lot of wholesale distributors, provide that environment in their buildings, that, you can go as a wholesale distributor to restaurants and buy, a pallet of pineapples and a pallet of tomatoes and a pallet of peppers and a pallet of whatever fruits and vegetables. Versus in Laredo, you're going to see a full truckload of avocados, and you can't just buy one box or one pallet, right? It's got to be the full truckload. So that's the pattern that we're seeing, and those larger full truckload distributors of produce are building their buildings and expanding them in Laredo. As an example, that Mission Produce building that I showed you, that's 100% avocados. They've got a small partnership with a different group on berries inside. But, again, those are full truckloads and not, smaller amounts that you can purchase as a, wholesale distributor. So.
And where's the labor force coming from? I mean, obviously, a lot of the labor is construction labor, but where is that all coming from?
For construction labor, or the operate the buildings?
Well, both, because you've got quite a array of labor force needs there.
I wish we had Yvette Sanchez here from our Economic Development Corporation to answer that. I've always my answer on labor has always been as follows. If you're going to locate in a city that has a lot of available labor, they're available for a reason. They don't like to work. That's how I see it. But maybe maybe I'm wrong. But Laredo, even in and out of the pandemic, saw a quick recuperation and below the state average. I haven't checked the statistic on lately, but I know last year we were already below the state average of availability of labor. I believe it's just over 4%. But it's
a lot of the labor along the border comes from Mexico. And just like the retailers cannot pin them as part of the population and understand, on a, software that you pay thousands of dollars a month with a few clicks, understand how they behave. I think it's the same for employment of, these industrial facilities and office buildings. A lot of these folks, have worker permits or, temporary visas, or, simply they may be American citizens, but they choose to live on the Mexican side of the border, right? So you have a little bit of everything that is employed. And where are the rest going to come from? I don't know the answer to that, but I do strongly believe that they will come, because these jobs are going to be available, and folks are going to go where they're getting proposed good salaries, and we're seeing very strong proposals from these folks that are seeking to set up new facilities in Laredo on the pay per hour that they're sharing with us, the city and the county. So I think it's encouraging, to see these numbers go up on hourly wages for a lot of these workers.
And with a 0% vacancy in your industrial, what type of lease rate structure are you seeing as far as on a square foot basis?
Rental rates, you mean?
Rental rate. Yeah.
Rental rates are continuing to climb for, and not just because of the vacancy, but also just the cost of development is much higher. And also the coverage ratios on building to land have become lower, right? So, rental rates in Laredo, I believe, are some of the highest in the state of Texas, higher than all the other border markets, now even higher than El Paso, which used to always be a hair above Laredo. And a lot of it has to do with the size of the trailer yards, right? So if you have a lower coverage ratio on the building, your building has to be more expensive because you have more land and less building, and you charge on the square footage of the building and not the land. So that curve is also, if you don't understand it, can be deceiving, because you think it's just an increase in price for no reason. But if you understand the components and the reason behind, it makes a lot of sense. These operations demand more and more parking, not just for vehicles, but for trailers in particular. So rental rates, it really depends on the size. So you get some economies of scale on size, but we're seeing 75 to 85 cents triple net. That's kind of the range right now, and I see those getting pushed north of 85 cents in the near future.
So what kind of triple nets are y'all seeing?
Triple nets are, probably in the mid-teens right now. I wouldn't be surprised if, in the next few years, those are going to be approaching, 20 cents. You already see that in North Texas and, parts of, Central Texas. So that wouldn't be shocking to see that, especially as we see values continue to go up on land and buildings. So, yeah.
Wow. Interesting. let's see, I have one question that popped up here. As the food industry grows, restaurants near the industrial areas, the smaller amounts will be available to service the local market. Is there any small retail coming near the industrial parks, and do any of the master plans project that in the near future?
Yes, the answer is yes. The developers of land, the horizontal developers, as we commonly call them, need to be very disciplined, because as you're developing, you've got so many costs, or carrying costs, as you call them, right, with taxes and just your general cost, your interest, rate that you're carrying on your entire project. So it's very it can be very enticing to have a retailer come and offer you, whatever, and you take the offer, but you're not, I call it curating, right? It's our job, and I don't know, is everybody here licensed? Is our audience all licensed agent primarily?
Primarily, yes.
Primarily. So, I feel as sales agents and brokers, I mean, it's our job, if we're representing the land, to kind of curate these developments and not necessarily just sell the land, right? Who and how you sell it is impactful to the entire development. And that retail component, I think, is very, very important to make sure that you don't just land the retailer, but you land the right retailer, right? That's going to help enhance the development around it. So the answer is yes. There's several travel centers, as they're called. So these are larger truck stops, right, with restaurants around them. We're starting to see a lot of interest from hotel groups setting up hotels, close to these industrial parks, because they will get the business from the industrial park, as well as, they're in a major highway thoroughfare, the traveler to and from, let's call it San Antonio to Laredo, or, or to Monterrey, Mexico, for that matter, or also going east to west, and west to east. So there is quite a bit of retail that is going to come in, and those frontage lots, are definitely selling for higher prices. So you're seeing that already approaching, on the industrial side, you're, $7 to $8 a foot on the high end, the per square foot. The retail frontage of even these industrial parks are already at $10 to $15 asking prices. You're seeing transactions happen just shy of $10 a square foot, but I see that pushing north of $10 pretty fast. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. And I know this is probably a question that Yvette would have answered, but do you have any idea what the employment numbers are just in the industrial aspect of Laredo as far as number of employees?
I don't have that stat here. No, I'm happy to share it, but I don't have it here in front of me.
All right. Carlo, you talked an hour, so you took up the whole time. So that's great. I'm glad you have a lot of good information. It's always exciting to hear about Laredo and everything that's happening over there. And it's
I'll close with this, Randy, and I've got a lot of material, but for the first time in the history of Laredo, you see it be the #1 port in the entire nation, not just
right.
#1 inland port,
Mhm.
and sustained for 2 consecutive quarters. So as long as you see that the trade with Mexico is higher than the trade with China, and I'm talking country-wise, US with Mexico and US with China. As long as the trade with Mexico is higher than the trade with China, then Laredo and South Texas will continue to grow and become the strongest region in North America, possibly beyond.
That's great. I have one question that popped up. Are there any major manufacturing companies that you know of coming to Laredo?
There are. We've had a few in our office, and it's you're also going to start seeing manufacturing be forced to choose South Texas over Mexico for compliance purposes. So, and I'm not an expert in custom brokerage code, but I know enough to be dangerous. But the main thing to understand, there's a percentage that you need to comply in order to not pay that additional tariff. And that means the percentage that a product needs to be US made. So it does not have to pay an additional tariff because you made it, in Mexico or elsewhere. And you're going to see a lot of folks be forced to, have to assemble something or, manufacture. Maybe it's not a full production of a product, but, if let's just say you're making caps for a pen and you've got a metal clip on it that, it's the one that attaches to your shirt pocket, and you need to add the clip to the plastic cap of the pen. Well, just adding that can be considered, assembly and part of the manufacturing. It changes the percentage of where the product is made. So you're going to see stuff like that. And I think more than anything in the automotive industry, so maybe the pen example was not the best, but you're going to see more automotive industry components be forced to be manufactured in Texas, primarily in South Texas, I believe, to comply with these percentages for USMCA. So we're starting to see several of these groups, and I think we're just seeing the beginning of it.
Thank you, Carlo. Carlo, it's always great to talk with you, and we appreciate you always being willing to speak to our group about everything that's going on in Laredo. And we thank you once again. And we invite everyone to be sure and join us for our next Zoom in across South Texas, when we will concentrate on the Rio Grande Valley. And then after that, we'll be jumping up to San Antonio, and that'll be October 17th. And Carlo, I hope you get some of this rain that's bypassing us and going to the north of us and not dropping any down here. But the South Texas is definitely in need of whatever rain we can squeeze out of this thing. So, Carlo, once again, thank you very much. And everyone, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you on October 17th.
Thank you so much, Randy. Thank you to all. Have a great rest of the week.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.